Okay, I'm going to try doing this video again. I did a version of it the other day, and when I was editing it, I was just like, this sucks. It's too long and all over the place. What I'm trying to do is kind of bring three concepts or theories together in one thing. And the three parts that make up this is impossible architecture, divinity and manifestation, and this world, this place, as a training ground of some kind, or a school of some kind. And I'm bringing them all together in one thing. But last time I tried to make this, I went into explanation about all the three separate things first, and it was just awful, man. It was a slog. So I'm going to try to do it brevity edition. And the background on these three existing concepts, I talked about this stuff a lot on the channel, but my archiving system's pretty awful. So if you want to learn about the impossible architecture part of it, the guy to go to is John Levy. He covers that. As far as divinity and manifestation, you want Regan over at Transforming the Darkness. And as far as this place being some kind of training ground or school, that would be Matt over at Quantum of Conscience. If you know what those three things are to begin with, then you'll be up on what I'm talking about. So the impossible architecture part, these buildings, a lot of them anyway, for the most part, they don't have bathrooms or any kind of running water inside. For most of the ones I've seen, and a lot of the ones that are featured in videos or essays, whatever about them, they don't have bathrooms. And some of these places are huge, They got all these rooms, they got all this stuff, but no bathroom. Like, wouldn't you need a bathroom? And there doesn't seem to be any sort of plumbing system or electrical system or space for electrical systems, which I think is solved by some of the antennas and stuff. And it was probably like a free energy type thing, or just using a different origin for the energy or a different basis for the energy. Another thing is they're not temperature controlled, so they're not heated, or there isn't a place to heat them. Now, there are these things that people think are fireplaces in these buildings, and someone had pointed out along the way that as far as a fireplace, they don't really make sense, and they theorized that these setups could have been more like a controlled area for the rest of the house, for whatever it is they do, or something like that. But it wasn't the fireplace, and he explained why these things couldn't be fireplaces. A lot of these older buildings too, like I said, they don't have any kind of temperature control, no traditional windows. So it's strange. It's like, how are people living in these things, without plumbing or heating or any way to cool off? So I think the possibility exists that maybe people weren't living in them, or not people as we think about them. And that's where the manifestation, divinity comes into it somewhat, because what we really are is electrical beings. You're not your body. You are the electromagnetic energy that's in your body. I've gone over this a million times. That's what you are. This body is just the suit that you're either in or you're broadcasting to. So then what I'm thinking, putting this thing together, the manifestation aspect of it, is maybe these buildings were created by us a long time ago, when this place was still, and this is where the school part comes in, was still a school or a training ground. There was a guy years ago I was listening to about his DMT trip, and he's not the first one to make this sort of connection. I've never done DMT. I've tried out other hallucinogenics. I don't think DMT was around when I was in that era of doing a bunch of shit. So one thing that a lot of them have in common is their sort of description of being weightless, bodiless, but still being able to move and be in control of their environment. Things that would happen instead of reaching for something, it would be there with a thought, or you could create things with a thought, which is a lot like what we really are. And it sort of sounds like what our home area would be like. The pineal gland is also involved in this whole DMT thing. And the pineal gland, of course, being the sort of transmitter, the transmitter to God. Blow it up, Jones. A transmitter that is kind of how we connect to that world, or our point of origin or whatever. And he was talking about going across these plains, like on a sort of just flying across them in this weightless sort of light body. And he came upon a group of people who were like building castles, from what his description was, where they were just kind of floating around and imagining these things, and they would, I guess what they would imagine it would create. So he tried to do it himself, and it was working. He was creating a castle, is what he called it, but I mean that could be any building, So when you look at some of these impossible architecture buildings, and you're looking at things built around the Civil War era, stonework, brickwork, masonry that can't be, there's no quarry around to get this stuff. Resources seem to be, endless. It's not a factor, resources. And then you could put a several ton statue on top of a tower in the library. I mean, these buildings are all over, everywhere. You can go downtown in any major city or smaller places too, and they're usually occupied by government offices or some kind of state service or federal service. They always occupy these kind of buildings. Again, John Levy, he'll show you, he'll pill you on that whole thing. So if we were creating these with our mind, or whatever we have, whatever the creative manifestation thing is, we wouldn't need resources, so we could just do whatever we wanted to. And a lot of these buildings too are a lot bigger, and they go underground. If you would, a lot of times they've had these dig ups in cities when they had to move stuff, and they find that the building goes way, way, way underneath. My dad had a building that was kind of like that too. His basement of his office building was had really beautiful brickwork, and there were like windows. It looked like it was almost designed to be outside. This is in his basement. So there's no need for resources if you're just manifesting it from your mind. And also, you don't need to have temperature control because you're not going in it, and you don't need to have a bathroom because, well, when you're a light being, there's, you don't need to pee. So I'm thinking maybe it was us that made these back when this place was still a school, and that would explain why they're all over the world. I mean, they take up so much space here on the land. A lot of things that are mountains are actually heat blasted buildings, as people have found evidence of brick and different stonework in places all over. Again, John Levy, he's got all this stuff. They tried to destroy a lot of these that still remained after whatever heat incident shook up the snow globe, some kind of reset or something. So yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Maybe these are left over from when this place was still a school or a training ground, and that was oh my God, I'm dying. So that was us making this stuff. Us as, the progeny of God, children of God, or the child of God, as we are all one thing, actually. But we're split up into different points of attention, expressing ourselves as individuals, even though we are one thing. But at one point, I think this is an idea I kind of put together, and I haven't seen anyone else kind of come up with that. I don't think it's too crazy. I don't think it's too schizo. If you put in all those other, bringing all those elements together, it makes a lot more sense, because, I mean, they're called impossible architecture for a reason. I mean, or nicknamed impossible architecture. How would you get some of the stuff out to where these buildings are? I mean, yeah, I could go on about that. I could go on about all the other aspects of it, but, you know, just gave you a quick run through on where to go about those. But ultimately, my new addition to this is that those buildings, perhaps they weren't created by a empire called Tartaria that stretched the entire world, because even that still leaves a lot of questions, like, well, how did they get all the resources, all the building materials? They didn't seem to have a limit on those. And also, excuse me. And also, what was I gonna say? See, I fucked that up trying to light my stupid cigarette. See what happens when you need to have your people protection lit. Yeah, whatever. I just explained it. I mean, I could explain it 2 more times in slightly different ways, like I love to do, and stretch this thing out another 10 minutes, but I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to learn brevity. I don't know what will happen, but, you know. Don't blame the teacher. Blame the school.